Hey Sam,
Hey, Janan.
how are you doing? Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you too. I'm excited for our second episode today.
It's our second episode of Women in Construction Innovation podcast, but it's also our first episode with an actual guest speaker. We're so excited. We can't wait to have everybody here meet our speaker. And so I don't know, how do you want to do this? Like, we can't do a drum roll. We don't have our special effects yet. And
I
these
could, I could, I could do a.
Well, before we do that, she's somebody that comes from the construction industry. She's got a really interesting background, and she's set off on a new adventure that we're about to hear all about. And I think really get some inspiration around like what can you do in the construction industry and what kind of innovation is happening out there. So super excited. Okay, ready for your drum roll? All right, here we go. Hey,
Welcome,
Annie.
Annie.
Yeah. How's it
All right.
going? I love the drum roll. That was good.
It was, it's very professional, right?
I loved it.
We
Yeah,
make it work.
welcome.
Good to see you, Annie. So,
Yeah, I'm
welcome to
excited to
our
be here.
podcast. Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. So why don't we just start out? Tell us about you, and your work this summer at McKinstry, and a little bit about who McKinstry is.
Yeah. So my name's Annie Wright. I'm currently working as a business operations analyst at McKinstry. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I graduated from the University of Washington, studied political science. Whole plan was to go to law school and become a criminal prosecutor. I always told everyone I wanted to be the lawyer version of Olivia Benson from Law and Order SVU. Um, I graduated in December of 2019, so right before kind of everything hit the fan with COVID. I ended up moving down to Georgia and ended up joining Teach for America's Metro Atlanta region there. So I taught high school social studies to 200 students in Fulton County during the height of the pandemic. So not related to construction at all. But I ended up coming back to Seattle, worked at the prosecutor's office in King County for a little bit, and kind of had this moment where I realized that I was not chasing the right career for me at that moment. So I pivoted. I went to business school, and I just graduated this past August with my MBA from Seattle University. And I spent the summer, yes, go Red Hawks. I spent the summer working as a construction sales intern on the platform construction sales team at McKinstry. I had a great experience. I think being an intern is kind of a low stakes, low risk way to get into a company and get into a new industry and see if you like it. So I spent the whole summer just learning more about McKinstry's diverse offerings and really understanding how their sales teams operate. And I'm happy to be here to be able to talk to you all about McKinstry and the great work that we do in my experience.
That's awesome. I love your experience. It's like so eclectic and like
Yeah.
um I the Teach for America, I bet that was a really awesome experience. Hard
Yeah.
work, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
It was definitely challenging, but it's interesting to see how transferable our skills are and how we can go into a lot of different industries and make it work. So I'm excited to talk about the construction industry.
yeah, that's awesome. And that's kind of a good way to segue into our next question here, which, I wanted to see like how your work at McKinstry and your internship has really opened your eyes to the construction industry.
Yeah, and so like I said, my time as an intern was great because I realized that there are so many different career paths within construction. You can go into design, you can go into operations, you can go into the actual building or sales or marketing. Like the world is really kind of endless. And I think what attracted me the most to McKinstry and why I decided to stay on full time after my internship was over was just how supportive the company really is, and how I have a feeling that I'm going to be able to test out a couple different avenues and see where my career takes me, with the support of a fantastic people first company behind me. So I'm excited to see kind of where I end up in 10 or 15 years. And I couldn't make it there without starting as an intern first. So
That's awesome. So you're staying. That's great.
I'm staying, yeah. And the wannabe lawyer girl is now in construction, and I have a hard hat, and it's, I never saw myself being in construction. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm really lucky to work at a company that really puts their employees first. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, your experience, I think, is unique, of course, to you, but a lot of women can probably relate. And maybe they're considering a career in construction.
yeah.
I guess what advice would you give to a woman who's interested in pursuing this career in this industry, moving forward?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I was like, okay, what are two pieces of advice, or what pieces of advice could I give? And I thought of two things. The first piece of advice, and I would give this to men, women, whatever industry anyone's in, it's to build your own brand and to make it unique to who you are. I think if you're not genuine, or you kind of aren't authentic, people can see that. And I had a great conversation with a colleague. Her name's Kelsey Woodhouse, and she is, talk about a great example of a strong female leader in the industry. Like, she would be a great person to have on here and to talk to. She reminded me of something that I think I've thought about at different aspects of my life, and I've talked about it with other people, but that's the importance of thinking about how you want people to view you, and how you want people to see you, and how you want people to describe you. And I think a lot of times we think that we can't control how other people see us. And, to some degree, I think that's true. But in the professional world, I think that we can control at least how we act and how we show up in environments around us. And so I think it's really important for young women especially, but really anyone in any industry, to think about how they want people to describe them, and then make a strategic plan to be thought of in a way that type of person would act. So for instance, if I want people to think of me as being reliable, like, I need to make sure that on a daily basis, my actions are reflective of someone who's reliable. So that's my first piece of advice. Build your own brand, market yourself authentically. And then my second piece of advice, and I'm interested to see if either of you can relate to this, but I think it's important for women to believe that they belong in the spaces they go to or enter. So what I mean by that is, every meeting I go into, at least right now, I'm a new employee, I'm new in my career, I sit down at the table and I'm like, oh God, like, everyone in this room has 10, 15, 20 years more experience than me, and their technical expertise is more than I could ever even dream of accomplishing in my life. And I have, and I'm sure a lot of women can relate to this, I've had that sense of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of you can relate to that.
Absolutely.
And I think as women, like, we're a little more prone to, feeling like we have to prove ourselves, especially in industries that are male dominated. And so I'm still working on this. I think I'll work on it till, the day I retire, but believing that I belong in every room that I go into. And believing that I belong on this podcast, because I can have an impact even though I don't have 15 years of experience in the industry, and so that's my second piece of advice, is just really for women to believe that they belong to be in the spaces that they're in, and know that you can have an impact that might look different from someone else's impact. it's still an impact.
I think an important thing you point out too is you've got this perspective on who you are today.
Yeah.
And that it is a journey and that it's an opportunity to build and learn and grow. But it doesn't, but just because you don't have the 15 years or the technical deep dive experience,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, doesn't exclude you from making an impact, from being a valuable person in that room, whatever room that is, right?
Yeah.
So I think and even people with 15 years experience, I mean, there's still a lot to learn, trust me.
Yeah, and like
yeah.
I try to remember that, when I go into some meetings, I have one meeting that I go into in particular, and when I go in, I kind of remember that half the people at the table started as interns and are now with the company 15, 16, 17 years later. Like my direct boss started as an intern.
Right.
And so it's just, it gives a little perspective. And I think it's really important. And I think it's something that we all have to constantly work at, and make a conscious effort to think that we belong in the spaces that we're in.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think having that confidence in the fact that you have a fresh perspective, even if you are new, you actually might even have a really great idea that somebody else hasn't considered in that room. So I think just having that confidence and the perspective can really help add to that feeling of belonging in the room.
Exactly.
I know I feel love working here at ToolWatch because I'm not afraid to share perspective, and I feel like I'm at my most creative here. So it's been a journey to get to this point.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the journey is what makes it worth it in the end, and you can reflect and, in 20 years, maybe you'll still be doing this and I'll come back and I can talk about, what happened between the time I talked to you as a recent former intern versus wherever I end up,
Exactly.
All about perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that openness there too, to talk about something like this. Not everybody's willing to share that. So really appreciate that. Just kind of get back into your experience and your internship. Would there be any other advice that you would give to a woman who's looking to get into this industry, and say there's an opportunity like yours, that the summer internship, what did you do to prepare yourself, and what advice would you give to somebody to prepare themselves to take on a position like this?
Yeah, and I mean, some of that prep work was unintentional. So I think of every past experience I've had as prepping me for where I'm at now. So I will say that I had to have some not so fun roles and some not so fun years, and some feeling like I wasn't utilized and I wasn't able to be creative. I had to do that first in order to be able to be in this position now. So I'll say that. And the second thing I'll say is, and I might be unique in this, so let me know if this is a unique thought. But it is so much more, or it is less important to me what I do on a day-to-day basis than it is who I'm doing it with, or who's around me, and what I'm doing it for. And so what I mean by that is, when I was early on in my job search, part of my MBA program requirement was that I had to do an internship. I had already had that requirement fulfilled by an on-campus position I had, but I started thinking about what type of values I have, like what my values are, and instead of looking for a full-time role or a job with a certain title or whatever it was, I started looking for companies whose values aligned with my own. And I think sometimes we get so bogged down in like, what's the title, or like, what's the responsibilities? And then we end up in positions where, yeah, we have the title we want, but we don't like the work culture. We don't like who's around us, and we don't know why we show up to work every single day.
Yep.
And I didn't want to do that. So I started another piece of advice would just be to look at companies, or well, first you have to figure out what your own values are. And I think that's uncomfortable. I don't think it's easy to talk about, ourselves and what we value and what's important to us. So that's the first step. And then the second step is to first look for companies whose values align with your own rather than just looking for titles.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience is so diverse, but a lot of it is in, the public facing work. And so I feared that if I were to step into the corporate world or the business world, that I would lose this ability to do good and to have a positive impact on the world around me. And so when I started looking for jobs, I first looked for companies who had strong values, and that's how I found McKinstry. So I didn't find McKinstry because I found the internship title or the internship role. I found the role because I found McKinstry first.
Yeah. I think there is definitely a paradigm shift a little bit in these days, and people looking at how am I spending my time?
Yeah.
And is that, I think the more classic route is like, okay, today I'm this, tomorrow I want to be this, then the next day I want to be this. And so therefore my next job, I need to have this title and I need to have, these responsibilities. And instead of looking at it that way to say, this is the life I want to build for myself, my family, or whatever it is. And therefore I need to be in an environment that's going to help me do that, regardless of, understanding certainly that you're qualified and you're excited about the work that you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
But that there's also a company behind that. I wonder if maybe for the listeners, could you talk a little bit about like, who is McKinstry and what kind of projects do they work on a little bit?
Yeah.
That would
Of course. And again, I'm talking based on my experience and my opinions, not as a representative of McKinstry. But the way that I think of McKinstry as is that we are a positive change maker in the built environment. So our tagline is that, is for the life of your building. Mm-hmm. And what impresses me so much about McKinstry and why I decided to stay on full time after my internship was that we really mean it. And so we are a national leader in not only designing, constructing, and maintaining buildings, but we do so in such a way that aligns with our priorities and our values. Mm-hmm. So some of those values, and, I think a lot of companies, can claim to have values and claim to have priorities and claim to, be people first. And the reason I've stayed with McKinstry past my internship is because I am so blown away by how McKinstry actually carries out those values on a day-to-day basis. So we care about lifting up future generations, restoring and protecting the environment, and advancing equity and social justice. Mm-hmm. And so when we design, build, and maintain buildings, we're doing so in a way that aligns with our priorities, and in a way that is at its very core impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there some cool projects, like when you were an intern, what did you actually do? What were speaking of responsibilities, like, what were some of your responsibilities?
Yeah. So, and that's why I love the internship program, because I kind of went in and I was like, okay, this is what I think I'm good at. This is what I think I want to do. And I don't think I mentioned this. I applied for a marketing internship with McKinstry because I thought I wanted to be in marketing. I was like, I don't want to go into sales. We all have these like negative stereotypes of a car salesman. I was like, I'm not going into sales. I was like, I can
Jeez,
write.
Amy. Just kidding.
Really, I had this negative stereotype. So I was like, okay, I'm going to marketing. I talked with the recruiter. The recruiter was like, I want you to meet Joan Smith, who is my now director. So she's the director of construction sales and marketing for the platform construction team. The reason that I accepted the internship was because of Joan Smith, because I had a conversation with, again, another amazing female leader, started as a mechanical engineer and is now just paving the way for women like myself. So had a conversation with her. I was like, okay, this is what I think I'm interested in. Like, I wanted to go towards marketing. And she was like, I think that we could have a really productive summer if you join my team. Joined her team. And what I loved about my internship was I could kind of pick and choose the pieces that were the most valuable to me. So for instance, I played a pivotal role in planning and executing an overnight sales retreat for 40, I think it was like 43 was our final number, top sales leaders across the construction line of business. And so that was an extremely rewarding experience because we got to work together. We got to come together for this like really connected time that I think we don't get to have with people these days. Like you usually, your phone's ringing, your email's going, whatever. We all got together. And I was in a room surrounded by brilliant people, just talking about coming back to our basics of like who we are, why we do what we do, and how can we do it better. So that was the most fulfilling thing I did over the summer. And again, I worked really closely, supporting my director, trying to ask as many questions as I could. So one of my tasks actually, and this is like a weird, I don't know if you've ever been in a position where your boss tells you that one of the things you have to do is to meet other people and to like go introduce yourself to people and like network. Because I don't know, I'm used to just like, okay, make this Excel or make this PowerPoint or like give this presentation. Like I'm not used to being told you have to go out and introduce yourself to people and you need to go network. And so one of my main responsibilities over the summer was to build an internal network. And so that meant just, kind of doing like stuff like this, just informational interviews with people in all sorts of different levels, all sorts of different positions, and really just learning from them and starting to kind of envision where I could be in 10 to 15 years at McKinstry. So yeah, it was a great experience.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
Sam, do you think she came around to sales then?
I think so, yeah.
I know, and that's the thing. I used to think, Sam, and this I'm still, my boss and I, and maybe you and I can talk some days.
Yeah.
We've been talking about, do I need to get some direct project experience before I'm able to go into a sales position? And so that's one thing that, it goes to show the different kind of avenues you can go in a career in construction. It's like, I'm coming in as an analyst. If I want to, and I think it's valuable and my mentors think it's valuable, I could go get some project experience as a P or a project coordinator. I could solely work on projects. If we decided that's what's best for me, I could pivot into sales. I could join the marketing team. Like, I just feel very supported and empowered to kind of make a decision that is best for me and allows me to have an impact on the company. So
awesome.
Yeah. So I don't know, we might be a fellow account executive one
Hey.
day. Hopefully. Gotta work our way up.
Yeah. It's not so bad. It's actually for me, it's been a really rewarding career. I think just community has been a huge part to how I've gotten to where I am today. And not a used cars salesman over here. Really just kind of focused on building real connections with people and really trying to help them. Leading with curiosity because, there's people with varying experience out there, 10 to 15, 25, 50 years experience, right?
Yeah.
But we can all learn from each other, and just kind of leading with that curiosity is, I mean, it's what makes this job so easy, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, and that's, I mean, and I will say, I think a lot of it too depends on the company you're at. So I think in both of our sense, we're very lucky to be at companies where that's the sales culture, where, if I could be a successful seller because I know how to build relationships, I know how to communicate, and I know how to understand issues beyond my paycheck or my commission or whatever it may be.
Sure.
Like, and if you actually want to do good for your clients, and you actually want to make the communities you're working in a better place, which is one of the things I just have so much respect for McKinstry for, is because they're salespeople. We actually want to do that. Like, our sales teams want to deliver the best possible solutions for our clients in a way that aligns with our priorities of protecting the environment, uplifting generations, and fighting for the equity cause. And it's exciting to be a part of. I'll say that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of that too, that community is really unique to construction as well. Just I've had the pleasure of also having kind of a unique background coming from the building industry, and then I was in car rental before, so I've had a long career. And I really do think that construction is a really unique industry that sales or helping people is really kind of how I look at it. And it's not the traditional used car salesman sales
exactly
tactics and whatnot. It's more than that, and that's why I'm here. And just like you, I'm here for the long haul. So
Yeah.
No, I love it.
Fabulous space to be in, that's for sure. And like, that's why Sam and I, got inspired to do this podcast, to bring more of those stories to the surface, because when you say the construction industry, lots of things could go through your mind about what that really means, because it can mean a lot of different things. But at the core, it is about communities and people's lives, and how this world is changing, and an industry that's got to change right along with it to continue to make a positive impact. So
I think you're doing a great thing, like, which is starting these conversations. And like I said, the conversations I've had with strong female leaders at McKinstry is why I wanted to stay on full time, because I could envision myself being in their shoes. And you guys you're doing a good thing. I am appreciative of this opportunity to come and talk to you. And
we can't thank you enough for coming, Annie.
Yeah,
this is great. Right back at you.
not the end of a conversation. There's a lot more conversations to be had, but I feel like it's an exciting time for women in the industry.
Definitely.
Well, on that note, maybe we should ask that one of those last questions we wanted to ask Sam around how do people connect with you, Annie, and maybe find out more about McKinstry too.
Yeah, I mean, I always encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn. My friends make fun of me because I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, but I think it's a great way to connect with people. And it's a great way to just network and build those relationships, and kind of, again, like a low stakes way. So I always encourage people to reach out to me, connect with me. I also encourage everyone to reach out to, or follow McKinstry on LinkedIn, follow us on social media. We're always posting about open opportunities, all the cool projects that we're working on. Just had Jay Inslee over at our Catalyst building in Spokane, and so we have a couple posts about that, and just
he's the governor of Washington.
Yes, the governor of Washington. Sorry.
Thanks for that.
Governor of Washington, had him over. Sorry, I forget that I'm not talking to just Seattle people. But yeah, connect with us on LinkedIn. And I would also suggest because this is the first way that I ever was introduced to McKinstry, I would suggest everyone check out our website. And I also would suggest, and maybe we can link it, in the show notes of McKinstry's Action for Impact. So that's our comprehensive plan. It's our comprehensive commitment to our clients and our communities, about our commitments to address the three main challenges that we've seen. So that is the climate crisis, the affordability crisis, and the equity crisis. And so I would encourage everyone to check out our Action for Impact. I think it's what made me apply to an internship at McKinstry. So
yeah, awesome. Well, they're lucky to have you, Annie.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. This is so great. I'm excited to be here, and maybe you'll have me back sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you back again later on.
If we're still doing this in 15 years, we'll probably have her back as some sort of like chief marketing officer at McKinstry or something, right?
I love it. Hopefully. I'll work our way up.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Annie.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Good to see you.
Yes, thanks everybody. Have a good
Until
day.
next time.
Until next time.
Bye.